Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today in this video I'm going to be sharing with you guys how to draft the pattern for the making of this cute underbust corsets I'm wearing right now. It was inspired by this cutie on the side, so if this is something you're interested in, keep on watching and let's get started with the pattern drafting. So guys, I already drafted out a basic bodice pattern with a side dart in front. This is what I want to use to show you guys how to go about the drafting of this pattern. So if you do not know how to go about this at all, I'm going to be leaving a link to my last Victorian corset pattern where I showed you guys how to take the measurements and how to draft a corset pattern using the side dart. Okay, so first thing I want to do on this pattern is I'm going to divide this armhole and shoulder area into two equal halves. Go ahead and do the same thing, and I'm going to make a mark here, and I'll be connecting from this point down to meet the bust point. So now I'm going to be marking this side out area here. You can see I just made some zigzag line here because we're going to be taking off the side dart. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut on this new line we just created, and then we'll also cut on the bust line like this, and then you're just going to be able to move this paper around to use and close up the dart. So I'll be using a tape to hold it down like this. Go ahead and do the same thing. So once you've done this, you have taken away the side dart and you have opened up the shoulder dart. So now on the underbust line, we're going to be taking in our underbust contours. So what I want to do is from the dart leg we already have, on the part going towards the center of our blouse, I'll come out by half an inch. You can come out by 0.75 inch if you're very busty, but half an inch works for most people. Then on the other side, which is going towards the side of your corset, you're going to mark 1 inch. 1 inch works for most people, but if you're very busty, you can use 1.25 inch or 1.5 inch. So as you can see, I am connecting these 2 points to meet the bust point. Okay, go ahead and do the same thing. So now before we extend these darts to the end of our blouse, we want to determine how long we want our blouse to be, our corset to be actually. You don't want your underbust corset to be too long. Corset generally, if they're too long, they're going to actually disturb you. So from my waistline, I am coming down by 5.5 inch. This is how long I want my corset to be. I just came down by 5.5 inch. You can take the measurement from your shoulder down to where you want it to be. Okay, so for me, I just came down by 5.5 inch. That works for most people. You can come down by 4 inches from your waistline and just go ahead and draw a straight line across. So now I'm connecting the that I had on the underbust line down straight to meet this new corset length. So now this whole area that I created, the zigzag line, is going to be cut out. So this is our underbust contouring that we just did here. So now we want to determine the shape for the upper part of our corset. So what I want to do is towards this middle here, I want to come up a little bit and go up a little bit on the side. Okay, so I'll first of all use my pencil from this underbust line here. I will just go ahead and use my ruler to just create like a curve towards the center here on this side. And I'm going to do the same thing on this other side as well. I'll just connect from this dart towards the side like a slant. Don't make it too curvy, okay? So that it will be easy for you to stitch. So now we're going to add our body measurement so that we can replace the darts. So on this waistline from the center line here, I'm going to divide my waist measurement by 4 and make a mark there. Then I'll measure this dart that I have here and replace it back. So for me, I had about 2.5 inches. So it came outside of the side line that I had before. That is totally fine. So what I will do now is to just extend from the waistline out to meet that point that I had there. So now on the hip line, that divided by 4, I had marked here. I marked it here. Okay, I'm going to measure the dart, and then from this mark I have, I'll replace it as well and mark it outside the sidelines. So I'll connect from the sideline now to meet this new point here. Okay, so now I'm going to be connecting these 2 points with a curve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using my curved rule. When you're using your curved rule, don't make it too curvy like this, the way I placed it here. It's going to give you issues when you're trying to stitch it down. So just go ahead and give it a very nice slight curve like I'm doing here, and just connect the 2 points together. Okay, So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect a straight line from my armhole to meet the new waistline. So just like this. So go ahead and do the same thing. So now I will just use my ruler to my curved rule to just make this point more visible, this curved that I had earlier from the underbust. So I'll just connect it now to meet this new line on the side, and then from the middle I'll connect to meet the line as well. So this is basically it. I'm going to be adding this box to the center. This box was a little bit too long, but I'm going to have to just manage it. And I'm just checking to be sure that this box is going to be the amount of space I have for the busk is long enough. And I noticed that it's not exactly the same length, like my fabric is not going to be as long as the box. So I'm going to be giving it enough stitching allowance when I'm cutting on my actual fabric, so that I'll be able to have space to stitch down the busk. Okay, so when it comes to the end of your corset, you can decide to actually play with it as well. You can decide to like give it a nice shape, whatever shape you want. So for this one, I just decided to just give it a slant on this side, just a small slant. As you can see, I just did it with my pencil, and I'm just going to now make it more visible with my marker like this. So this is just the slant I want to give this corset on the side. So I'll just go ahead now and cut this out. So I would advise that you please pay attention to what I'm doing here in the cutting area, so that you don't make any mistakes when you're cutting out your own, so you know exactly what you're cutting out. So when you're cutting out the side, make sure that you're cutting out the new side line that you have and not the old one that we had earlier. So this is basically all. These that are going to be cut out later, I'll be cutting it out later. So this is all for the front pattern for now. Let's go ahead and draft out the back pattern. So guys, to draft out the back pattern, I already have my basic back pattern here, and you see we already took in that this is just a basic back pattern. Okay, so now what I want to go ahead and do is from the waistline, I'm going to come down by 5.5 inches, just like I did on the front pattern, to get our corset length. Okay, so whatever you used for your corset length from your waistline, go ahead and mark that line and label it the corset length, because the front and the back must have the same corset length. Okay, so once you're through with that, the next thing you want to do is you're going to come up to this dot line here and come out by 0.25 inches on both sides. Okay, so from that new point I came out by, I'm going to connect a straight line to meet the normal dart leg that we had on the waistline. If you don't understand what I'm saying, just look at what I'm doing in the video. Now on this corset length line, I'm going to do the same thing as well. Come out by 0.25 inches on both sides, and I'm just going to connect them to meet the waistline as well. So I also make a zigzag line across just to show you guys that that part is a dart and is going to be cut out. So now I'm bringing the front pattern and I'm going to align the waist of both the front and the back in a straight line. Just make sure that it's straight, and you're going to notice that the sides are not going to be the same thing. So you're going to trace the side of the front pattern onto the back pattern. So just look at what I'm doing here. Ensure that everything is staying perfectly, and just from the waist, trace the side. Trace it to the end of the paper on the back pattern like this. And then we'll also come to the top and make a point where the front pattern and the back pattern meets at the top, so that the top is exactly the same thing. So now from this line that I had here, I'm connecting a slant as well to meet the dart leg, just like we did earlier in front. So now from this point we made here, when we placed our front pattern on the back piece, we are going to create like the neckline for the back. Now the sides must be the same, but every other part you can decide to go down on every other part, but the side, that point you had, must be the same. For me, the point is actually fell on the line that I already had there, so I just created a curve now to meet the dart here. Now I have to make sure that the curve I created here, the measurement from this point to this other side on the dart, is exactly the same thing. So I just measured it to be sure it's the same thing and made the point there. So from this new point, I'm going to decide how I want the back to look. So you can decide to go up, you can go down, you can just play with this one actually, but on the side is where you must make sure that the front and the back are lines. So you can see on this center back, I went up a little bit higher than what I have on this side. Okay, So now go ahead and cut this out. So please pay attention to the areas I'm cutting out as well, so that you don't make any mistake when you're cutting yours. So these are the front and the back patterns right now. These are just the basic patterns. I'm just going to be labeling them F and B, just to show you guys the back and front. So this is B and this is F. The front actually has the wider dart, just in case you are confused when you are trying to do this later. So guys, now it's time to take in more darts on this corset, which is actually going to give it that snatch waist effect that corsets normally have. So from the side line, on the side of this particular front pattern, I divided what I have from the dart line to the side into two, or you can just decide to just gauge it with your eye, which is what I did here, to get the straight line here. Now on the side of this straight line, I came out by 1/4 of an inch on both sides. So 1/4 of an inch on both sides of this, I'm using it to create a dart, will give me a total of 1/2 inch on one side. And you know we are going to be cutting this in a fold, so altogether I'm going to have 1 inch dart on the front pattern, and on the back pattern as well I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to divide on the side here into two. You can decide to take a measurement to get the center of this. I said it before, but if you don't want to do that, you can also go ahead and just use your eye to gauge a line as well. So I came out on both sides again by 1/4 of an inch, which is going to give us a total of 1/2 inch on this side. So I'm connecting these darts, as you can see. So 1/2 inch on one side of the back, 1/2 inch on another side of the back is going to give a total of 1 inch on the back. So now I'm going to label this area. This is the center back, this is the side back 1, and then this is the side back 2. Okay, so now on this center back, from the end of our corset, which is the corset length, I'm coming in by 1/2 an inch. This is just to help remove any form of bulginess, and just to help our corset to stay very nice and firm. So I just marked that into the neckline and did a zigzag line as well to show you guys that that part will be cut out. Now on this front pattern, I have the center front, I have the side front 1, and then I have the side front 2. So altogether, like I said before, we are taking 1 inch dart away from the front and 1 inch dart away from the back. So altogether this corset is going to be 2 inches smaller than my actual waist measurement when I wear it. I know that all of these that I'm trying to explain might be a little bit confusing, but I would just advise that you take your time to just follow up everything I've said. Follow it up, take your time. Corset is not something you rush. So yeah, as you can see, I'm just cutting out the darts, which has the zigzag line. That's why I always made them zigzag, so I know where to cut off. So I've cut off the front pattern. I will also go ahead and cut off the back patterns now. So guys, these are all the patterns that I'm going to be using to make this underbust corset. These are the back pieces, and these other ones on this side are the front pieces. So I just aligned them in the direction that it's going to look. So this is like one side of our corset. So when I draft corset patterns, another thing I like to do is to label them very properly, because you don't want to have any issues when you are stitching this down. So this is the center back, so I'm going to use my marker to give arrows. So the center back is going to go towards the side back 1 like this, and then side back 2 and side back 1 will go like this. So you need to do all of this so that you don't mix up your patterns when you are stitching them down. Now for the front pieces, side front 2, side front 1 will go like this, and side front 1 and center back will go like this. So I went ahead to place this pattern on my fabric, gave it stitching allowance all the way around, and you can see the outcome of my corset. So I'll be sharing with you guys how to sew this in my next tutorial. Subscribe if you're yet to subscribe so that you don't miss it.